Okay, so we have the inner fender panel reinstalled. We also temporarily bolted the battery box back into location over here if you want to come around and take a look. It's kind of temporary in its original OE spot. We're leaving the battery up front on this car. I wanted the battery box back in there so that when we actually bolt the dryer in, that we know that we're going to clear and have room for that battery to set in there. My 90-degree fitting, I believe, is going to work just fine here on the dryer. Down on the hard line to the condenser, the number 8 line, I did replace that. If you can look down inside of there, I took the 45-degree fitting off of that hard line and I replaced it with a straight. So that's a prime example of opportunity to use that exchange program. So now I think we're ready to build a hose. We're going to start with the number 8 hose from the back of the compressor down to the fitting on the condenser. And as I said, I used a straight fitting on the condenser, and it's a 90-degree service port fitting on the compressor. So one advantage of that straight fitting on the condenser is clocking or indexing those fittings is no longer going to be an issue because of that straight fitting. I can rotate it in any direction, and that lets me spin it around so that this 90-degree fitting will line up perfectly. So we're ready to make a hose. I'm going to start with the number 6 straight fitting, or straight hose end on the condenser. I'm going to pull it off of my hard line, and we're going to crimp it onto our Pure Stealth number 8 reduced barrier hose. Okay, so we're ready to make our first hose. We're going to start with the number 8 hose between the back of the compressor. This is a rear exit compressor. Sometimes they're top exit. And sometimes we use a SD7 compressor, but this instance it's a rear exit. So I'm going to start with the fitting that's going to go on the condenser, which will be a number 8 straight. I'm going to peel back the green masking tape that's on the end of the hose. Actually, to make it a little quicker, I'm going to put a piece of new tape on the hose. The green tape's been on there for a while, so I'm going to take some new masking tape. I'm going to take my ratcheting PVC pipe cutter, and I'm just going to clip the end of that hose nice and squarely like that. Now I can peel back that masking tape, and I'll be ready for the fitting. Trim back the little fuzzies on the end of the braid. Make sure it's nice and clean. And then I'm ready to work my fitting onto the hose. So I'm going to insert the barrel inside the hose and carefully twist as I push the fitting onto the hose. A little bit tight, but if I rotate as I push, I can get that fitting seated all the way down to the hose. And I'm looking for the witness hole in the end of the fitting to show me that I've pushed the hose all the way in. And just about there. And I can see a freckle of that masking tape in the hole. So I've got the hose seated into the barrel of the fitting, and now we're ready to crimp. So now comes the little piece of cloth that's included with each fitting. I'm going to wrap it around the barrel of the fitting, the crimp barrel, and I'm going to cut this guy to length so that it's just a hair longer, so it'll just slightly overlap itself. I'm going to take about 3/8 of an inch strip of masking tape, and I'm going to tape the cloth around the barrel of the fitting. Believe it or not, sometimes this is the most challenging part of the installation, is getting that cloth taped into position around the crimp barrel. There we go. The cloth is used because we're going to apply significant pressure with the crimping dies. That's what the inside of the crimping dies look like. So each one of those little bumps is going to make a little indentation in that crimp barrel. The pressure is such that without this cloth, occasionally it will want to polish the coating down inside those little dimples. So that's why we used the cloth wrap around the crimp barrel. I have my number 8 reduced barrier dies. I'm going to snap those into my crimper. Just like so. I'm going to put my fitting, center it in the crimping dies, close the jaws, pin them shut, tighten up my handle, and at this point I'm ready to start crimping, but I want to center that crimp barrel in the dies, so I have roughly the same amount on this side of my die as I do on this side of the die, and I'm doing that by eye, and I'm also doing it by feel, so I can feel that that crimp barrel is centered in the dies. I'm going to tighten the knob on my crimper and start applying pressure. And now that it's squeezed in there a little bit, I can turn it so you can see. And I'm going to crimp until the lower jaw touches the upper jaw on the crimping machine. And we're there. So I'll release the hydraulics on the crimping machine, open the jaws, and my number 8 straight hose end is crimped onto my Pure Stealth hose. This kit comes with 6 feet of number 8 hose. It's been my experience, if a hose is an inch too short, then the whole hose is too short. So we include plenty. This kit includes 6 foot of number 8 hose. We're going to end up probably using something like 2 feet of it. So save the excess. We sell the fittings separately. So if you're doing a second car, a lot of times you may have enough hose left over from one kit to actually plumb a second kit, and all you need to buy is the additional fittings. So we're going to install this back on the car. This end goes on the condenser. We're going to install it back finger tight where it goes, and that'll tell me where I need to cut for the fitting that goes on the compressor. So I have, we've crimped the number 6 straight, or the number 8 straight fitting that's going to go to the condenser. I've used tape to mark the length. I put the tape on there so I know that if I cut this roughly in the center of my tape, this number 8 hose will be the correct length to go from the back of the compressor down to the condenser. I'm going to peel my masking tape off. Finding the end of the tape is always the fun part. There, we found it. Peel that off. Carefully, I'm going to trim back the braid with my scissors. Like so. And I'm ready to put my number 8 90-degree service port that came off of the back of the compressor. I'm ready to install this on the hose and crimp it into position. So again, I'm twisting as I'm pushing. It feels like it's bottomed out. I'm looking for that witness hole, and I know I can see that my hose is all the way through the fitting. So this fitting is ready to crimp. One thing to point out, because this has a straight fitting on this end, the clocking orientation is not going to be an issue. Because this fitting can twist, I'm not concerned with the orientation of clocking this fitting to the hose. So however I turn it, it will end up on the car like so. So this guy's ready to crimp. Okay, we're going to remove the crimping cloth from the service port 90-degree fitting that's going to go on the compressor. And we have our first hose made. So I'm going to go ahead and install it on the car. At this point, I'm going to blow through the hose with some compressed air. Make sure that all of those little strands that we trimmed off of the end of the hose are cleared out of the hose. One little strand left in a hose could plug the expansion valve. So I always want to use compressed air, blow through the hose before you actually install it, get any debris, any dust, any of those little nylon strands that we trimmed, to get those cleared out of the hose before you install it on the car. I'm going to oil the O-rings. I'm going to put a drop of oil on the threads on both fittings, and we're going to go ahead and install this hose on the car in its final location.